As we approach our 100th episode, we're taking a look back at one of our most popular broadcasts, episode 76 of the Healthier Workplaces show, featuring Donna M. Doganiero. This year marks the 25th anniversary of September 11, 2001. In this episode, Donna reflects on her more than 50-year career in occupational and environmental health, including her role in the immediate response to the September 11th attack on the Pentagon. She shares her perspective on the important role OEHS professionals played in the aftermath.
Welcome to Season 4 of AIHA's podcast series, The Healthier Workplaces Show, where we explore timely and informative topics about occupational and environmental health and safety. I'm your host, Alejandro Castillo. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with industrial hygienist Donna Doganiero. Donna is a distinguished occupational and environmental health professional with a career spanning more than 5 decades in industrial hygiene. She earned a bachelor's degree in biology from Rider College in 1974, a master's in human genetics from Rutgers University in 1976, and another master's in environmental health and industrial hygiene from Temple University in 1979. Early on, Donna was a researcher at NIOSH, evaluating worker exposures in the mining industry and developing control recommendations for the Mine Safety and Health Administration. In 1981, she began a long, impactful career with the U.S. Army Center for Health Promotion and Preventive Medicine, formerly the U.S. Army Environmental Hygiene Agency, advancing from Field Project Officer to Director of Occupational Health Sciences. With the Army, she managed large, multidisciplinary programs in industrial hygiene, ergonomics, radiation safety, vector-borne diseases, and medical safety assessments during weapon system development. Donna also served as the industrial hygiene consultant to the Army Office of the Surgeon General on technical and policy issues. Outside of her Army career, Donna has held several national leadership roles in AIHA. She has served as board director, treasurer, vice president, as well as president of the association from 2004 to 2005. Among her many honors, Donna has received the Order of Military Medical Merit for her dedicated application of talent, effort, and spirit to the U.S. Army Medical Department. She also received the Commander's Award for Civil Service Excellence for her participation in the response to the September 11, 2001 terrorist attack on the Pentagon. Today's episode is part of a luminary series. We're going to talk about Donna's more than 50-plus years in OEHS and learn how the OEHS field has changed over her career. Donna, thank you for joining us today.
I'm so honored to have been asked to participate in this, and I'm ready to answer your questions to the best of my ability.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning. How did you discover OEHS, and what led you to become interested in this field?
Well, it was by accident. A lot of people come into the field of industrial hygiene by accident, and mine was by accident. I was working at Temple University Medical School Biochemistry Department doing research. I went out for lunch to get a hot dog off of a vending truck, and in front of me was a college classmate, and I recognized her, asked her why she was in North Philadelphia. She said she was going to school for industrial hygiene, had no idea what it was. She told me about it. I was not happy doing research in the lab. I went over and I spoke with the head of the department at Temple University. It was a educational resource center, a NIOSH educational resource center. They had money, they had openings, and I applied and I got in. So I became an industrial hygienist and found out about the profession totally by accident. I had no idea what industrial hygiene was until I bought that hot dog, that whatever day of the week it was, in the fall. I believe it was the fall. So that's how I found out, and that's how I started my career and my training and my career in industrial hygiene.
That's so fascinating. I think I only ever met one person who's ever actually known this field before they entered, and so I'm always curious when I ask each person.
Yeah, a lot of people may have known somebody, or some people have a parent. My parents were, my mother was a nurse and my dad was a pharmacist, and they had no idea what I was going to school for. And they kept on thinking I was going to go work for the EPA, and I kept on saying, no, not the EPA, mom and dad, but that's where they were, and that was okay.
Okay, so when you joined NIOSH in 1979, what was the occupational safety and health landscape like back then?
Okay. Well, my perspective of what it was like from back then is from a brand new person coming into the field. And at the time, that was 1979, the job market was tight. I remember looking for a job. My career plan was to work for OSHA, and then go work for private industry, which you can see. I worked for NIOSH and then I worked for the Army. So my whole career plan totally changed. But at the time, the job market was tight. But the environment at NIOSH when I started working there was very positive. It was a positive working environment, a lot of activity going on. They were writing criteria documents, doing health hazard assessments. They were on the top edge of doing things, and it was a great place to work. And there was just lots of energy. And I worked at the headquarters in Rockville, Maryland. In 1981, however, there was a change of administration, and the Reagan administration came in. It was pretty anti-regulatory, I would say, in retrospect. And the NIOSH headquarters were moved out of Rockville, Maryland. They were moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and the staff was disseminated between they could go to Atlanta, not many people, only the higher level people, to Atlanta, to Morgantown, West Virginia, and Cincinnati, Ohio. So at that point, I would say the focus on occupational health, and as we went into the 80s, the beginning of the 80s, was diminished. And the atmosphere was a little bit desperate for me as an industrial hygienist, as a new industrial hygienist with very little experience. And so that's how the environment was. It went from being, in my opinion, somewhat positive and energetic to muted, and moving a organization's headquarters out of the Washington, D.C. area basically sends a message that that organization is not a player. To play, you have to be in D.C. I understand that. I even understand it more now from a different perspective, an older perspective, a more experienced perspective. But that was sending a message that we were changing the rudder as far as what we were going to be doing with occupational safety and health. And the emphasis was going to change. And so that was, I went from it being more positive to being somewhat muted and negative during my time at NIOSH. Even though my time at NIOSH was very positive, I have to admit, there was a lot of positive things going on at NIOSH when I was there.
So let's talk more about the transition from NIOSH to the U.S. Army.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like, and what motivated you to move to the military occupational health?
Well, my motivation to move was I needed to find a job, and there aren't a lot of jobs out there. I wanted to stay on the East Coast. My parents lived in New Jersey, so I wanted to be close to my parents. My brother was in medical school. There were just some family issues, and I wanted to be on the East Coast. I did have a job in either Morgantown, West Virginia, or Cincinnati, Ohio, but I did not want to move. So through the AIHA local section, which I was heavily involved with, went to the meetings every single month. I met people that worked for the Army Environmental Hygiene Agency, and they would always come down to the meetings. And through relationships that I built up with people at the local section meetings, I found out they had some job openings. I applied for a job, and they were very happy to hire me. I never planned on staying and working for the Army. My plan, once again, my career plan was to work for the Army for a period of time and then transition out to private industry. My focus was I just wanted to work for private industry and not work for the government. Well, and that didn't happen. And I spent the rest of my career working for the Army, which was actually a wonderful experience. It was an experience of support and challenges, and great opportunities for travel and experiences and meeting people. And also, they supported me when I became a officer within AIHA. They were very proud of the fact that I was an officer in AIHA. And that gave me the opportunity to kind of combine my wanting to give back to the profession and be involved differently than just my job with my job. So it just all kind of came together. So that's how I wound up with the Army, and I stayed there for a long period of time because they had great opportunities there was advancement, and there was also opportunities to grow. And that was very important. For me, it just made me feel that I had purpose and that I was evolving as a professional.
AIHA Connect 2026 On Demand is now available. Access over 101 possible contact hours, 101 education sessions, 13 education pop-ups, and 15 innovation stations. The full education package is available for purchase through December 31st, 2026.
Early in your military occupational health career, you worked in industrial hygiene field services, which required you to travel to installations and evaluate exposure risks. What about this hands-on work stood out the most to you?
What stood out the most to me was seeing the diversity of operations that are part of the Army industrial base and Army facilities. I did not know a lot about what the Army was going to have as far as workplace sites, but I went to places as diverse as foundries, places that were fabricating weapon systems, that were rebuilding weapon systems, that sandblasting, welding, spray painting, hospitals, office buildings. So what impressed me the most was the diversity of the operations that were out there to be evaluated. And I wasn't stuck in one industry where they were just manufacturing one thing. I saw, as I went to different installations, both within the United States and outside of the United States, the variety of operations. There were also operations that were similar, but there was such a variety of work sites to be evaluated because of the industrial base of the Army. And also, then we started getting into evaluating soldier exposures. And that was a whole nother area of a challenge to evaluate a soldier while he's training and to relate that information back to people who did not want to hear that they were putting their soldiers at risk. So, I mean, there was just this variety, and that's what surprised me the most, because I really didn't expect that. I honestly did not know what to expect when I started working for the Army, but then I began, and I was going out on surveys quite a bit initially. Then I went into management, but I went on surveys probably over 50% of my time. I was out in the field, and it was just the variety. I mean, every survey was something different. It was a different problem. It was a different operation. It was something new to learn that you had to learn about before you went out to become familiar with, well, okay, what is this? What is a welding operation? What kind of rods are they using? Learning all that in advance to go out in order to do the work. So understanding the variety of operations that were out there and learning as you go along, and then the variety and actually that made it a lot of fun. It actually, I mean, you were out in the field, you were out with a team of people, and you were evaluating a new operation, something new, something different, and you're actually having fun. I really enjoyed my time in the field. It was a lot of camaraderie, a lot of hard work, a lot of long hours, but it was a great experience. And that's the variety of working for an organization that has such a diversity of operations that support everything that they're responsible for.
So every day was a new day, essentially. It was never the same
Pretty
thing.
much, yeah. I was not bored. I don't think I was ever bored working for the Army. There was always something new happening. It's one of the things I miss being retired, is that sense of what's going to happen today and delving in and pulling teams together and working with people in order to solve a problem. Because every day, whether I was a project officer, a program manager, or a director, we were working on new issues every day. I loved going to work. I just loved what I did. I loved the challenge. and I loved working with the people that I worked with. I had great professionals to work with, and I had both military and civilian uh, mentors that guided me, that gave me a little, slap on the rear end every once in a while and say, "Come on, get your act together, Donna," and basically facilitated me becoming the professional I did.
Now let's go back to 1993 for a second, when you became the Director of Occupational Health Sciences. By the following year, you were overseeing 7 different mission areas. How did you manage such a diverse portfolio while keeping the unifying focus on occupational health?
So it just didn't happen. It evolved. I mean, how did I do it? I learned from my managers. I learned from other directors. I learned from my mentors. I felt more engaged, involved as a director and doing work as a director. I had to, when I became a director of multiple areas, and not just the few programs that were very industrial hygiene focused, but I had experts working for me. The Army Environmental Hygiene Agency was an organization of high-level experts. We were the experts in the field. We were the people that were asked the hard questions. So from my radiation experts, my ionizing and non-ionizing radiation experts, I had health physicists working ionizing radiation. I had physicists working lasers, and I had electrical engineers working radio frequency ultrasound. I could not be an expert in those areas. I had to learn to rely on them, but I also at the same time had to learn about their areas. I had to dig a little bit deeper. So there was a responsibility on my part, or that I made it a responsibility on my part, to basically learn more about those areas. What did I know about entomology? They put entomology in my directorate. Maybe a little bit in undergraduate school, but really I didn't know anything. So I relied on my entomologists. I had 20 entomologists working for me. They were experts in their field, board certified. They knew more about entomology than I would ever want to know about entomology. So I learned a certain amount. I let them teach me. And I grew my knowledge base, and I also learned how I needed to rely on my experts. Same thing with my industrial hygiene. I was very technical before I became a manager, but I became a manager and I had to rely on my industrial hygiene experts. So I had multiple experts working for me, and in letting them do their job and relying on them and trusting them, I had time to do what you do as a director. You direct, you worry about budgets, you worry about personnel, you worry about strategy. You try to bring things together when they need to come together, or look at things in a silo when things needed to be looked at in a silo. And it didn't happen overnight. It happened over time. And I think I grew as a director throughout my entire career because I was constantly evolving as problems changed, as issues changed, as technical areas changed. We added ergonomics to the mix in the mid-90s. That was never there originally. I had to learn a lot about ergonomics. I had occupational therapists working for me. I had industrial engineers working for me in ergonomics. I evolved into who I became as a director, and in the ability to integrate things. And I had many, many years to do that. And I also had mentors that believed in me, and I had people I could go to when I was feeling challenged and I didn't know what to do, and I could talk things out that helped me move forward.
Now, you served as the industrial hygiene consultant to the Army Office of the Surgeon General on technical and policy issues. What was this experience like?
It was a challenging experience because all of a sudden I found myself in this role of providing support to a higher level office. I was no longer just working within the Army Environmental Hygiene Agency, the Army Health, it transitioned to the Army Center for Health Promotion and Preventive Medicine, but I was no longer working just for that organization. It was a bigger picture. It was no longer looking at an installation or a simple technical issue. These were I was getting into things that were dealing with policy and strategy. And I needed to understand, I needed to up my game, and I needed to learn about the strategy. I needed to understand a different level of strategic involvement and how to work with the other services, the Air Force, most of the Air Force and the Navy, how to work with them, and to basically be there to represent my profession and the technical areas, but also being there to represent the Army Surgeon General and who he or she was presenting as a strategy for health, and how occupational health and industrial hygiene fit into that strategy. So I had to up my game, and I just didn't automatically assume this role and know it immediately. Once again, I did have mentors that were behind me, that understood that I needed some guidance, and I watched people and I learned. So the ability to act and to think strategically was something that evolved when I was in that role. And I took that ability and that knowledge back, and I helped run my directorate also. The knowledge of where things were going, and I took that back to help my team work more strategically, to think more strategically. And I just took it back. So the whole ability to think and act strategically evolved. And I think you continue to evolve as you are put in different situations. Your experiences continue to evolve you as a professional. And that is the important thing about if you are a professional, that you do continue to evolve, that you don't stagnate.
Is there a particular project that you are most proud of?
Project I am most proud of for the Army. There are two projects I'm very proud of. One's with the Army, one's for Department of Defense. But I'll talk about for the Army. The project I'm most proud of is the work that I did not do it. Me and my team did it in support of 9/11. That was a horrible day. I can remember it. It will never be erased from my memory. But when the plane hit the Pentagon later that morning, we were activated. We had people from my organization on the ground that afternoon. And there were a lot of people on the ground. There were emergency response people and safety people and occupational health people. There were all sorts of disciplines there at the Pentagon at the time. But we were called down. It's from Aberdeen Proving Ground. It's approximately a 2-hour drive to the Pentagon. We had people on the ground that afternoon. We had teams on the ground. One of the big concerns was whether or not the plane that hit the Pentagon had depleted uranium as a counterweight, which I never even knew planes had counterweights that were made of depleted uranium. But within my directorate were health physicists. We had health physicists on the ground to try to assess whether or not there was a radiation issue at the impact site. And so we also had, it wasn't just my directorate that responded, it was the entire organization that responded. We have toxicologists, environmental specialists, risk communicators, industrial hygienists, safety people, a whole team that we put together. We came together, decided what disciplines we needed, and we sent people down that afternoon. And we had people on the ground 24/7 for probably a few weeks. The idea was to try to determine when it would be safe to reoccupy the building. And that was our focus. There were other people focused on emergency response and basically disaster response and building structure. That wasn't our focus. We were the Army Environmental Hygiene Agency. But we had people there, and that we were looking at when could the building be reoccupied and what areas of the building could be reoccupied. That was a strategic thing country-wise to basically show we were back up and running. To basically say, okay, you hit us. You hit us hard, you've killed people, you've destroyed buildings, but we are back up and running. And that was important for the Department of Defense. And one of the ways to show that was to get the Pentagon back up and running. So we were involved with that effort. And like I said, 24/7, sending teams down, bringing them back. We would send them down with sampling equipment, and they would come back with samples. They would go to the laboratory. Our analytical laboratory was working 24/7. Everybody was working 24/7. But the work that we did, the quality of work, the way we came together as a team, what we contributed to the Pentagon and its reopening, and what we contributed to, I think, the nation in our response, is one of the things that I am most proud of, that I was involved with in my entire career with the Department of the Army.
How did that moment influence your perspective on occupational health and emergency response moving forward?
It gave me a greater respect for integrated teams and the importance of integrated teams in responding, as opposed to being in my own silo, which that was my responsibility. I was the director of occupational health sciences. I needed to focus on my team. I needed to focus on my mission. I needed to focus on my budget. But what that provided to me was the greater sense of the importance of looking at what disciplines you need to respond to an issue, and then how you bring that team together, and then how that team integrates with other teams, how everything is interrelated, how we don't stand alone. It just made me realize how much things are integrated, and that I was evolving as a professional at the time also. So you're gaining perspective. You're gaining that it's really a team effort as opposed to an individual effort. And I think that was the one takeaway that I think stood with me throughout my career. It really impacted when I worked with teams at AIHA, whether I was on a committee, whether I was on the board, when I was on other boards, is that it's not the individual, it is the team. And I believe a leader understands that. A leader basically understands it's not about the leader, it's about the team. I always believed that it was never about me, it was about the people that worked for me. And what they were able to do, they were just a reflection of me giving them the opportunity and the tools to do things. And they were the ones on the ground doing the work, bringing things back, and we would integrate together. But that teamwork is so important, and the realization that it's just not about you. It's not about an individual. It's about a team.
So we mentioned evolving quite a good amount so far in this episode. I want to ask you, throughout the years of OHS in your career, how has the OHS field evolved?
I think there's more technical information out there. There's more need to integrate with other disciplines, to understand other disciplines. I have a degree in industrial hygiene. It's a very singular focus. I believe from everything that I know and I've seen is that you're not finding people just going to school for industrial hygiene anymore. It's more integrated. It's occupational and environmental health, or safety and occupational health. It's not just a very narrow, and I'm not saying narrow in a bad point, but it's a narrow focus on industrial hygiene. When I got out of graduate school, it was very narrow focused. I was able to, throughout my career, kind of remain somewhat narrow focused because of my directorate, because we were focused on industrial hygiene, occupational health. And there was a whole nother part of the Army dealing with safety, and a whole nother part of my organization who was dealing with environment. And they were the experts in those areas. So what I have seen happen is the need for integration with these other disciplines that support occupational and environmental safety and health. There's an integration there that needs to take place. AIHA was very, very industrial hygiene when I was on the board. We were thinking a little about environment, trying to work with the safety profession, but that really wasn't our focus. Our focus was industrial hygiene, really, really industrial hygiene. I don't think you can just do that any longer. Things are too integrated. Companies don't want just an industrial hygienist anymore. They want someone that's more integrated. They also, what needs to happen, it's not just industrial hygiene. It's not even just the science side any longer. There's a need to understand the business side. There's a need to be able to communicate with business leaders to present your business case analysis. There's so much more involved with being a environment, safety, and health professional nowadays than just being just an industrial hygienist. And I think it's going to continue to evolve. I don't think it's going to stay the same. And it's just like organizations don't stay the same. AIHA doesn't stay the same. The BGCE, who's the certifying board, is not staying the same. They're changing their model and trying to incorporate other certifications. I think if you don't continue to change and evolve and keep up with what's going on, then you basically slowly become irrelevant, or you become diminished, or you go away. And I think that's why you keep evolving as a organization, as a professional, as a profession. You keep evolving, and the ability to change and to accept the changes, be willing to accept the changes. That's a challenge, to accept change, and to accept changes when you have your paradigm, and that's where you are. It's a challenging thing to do, and some people can evolve and some people want to stay where they are. And so that is kind of why I keep talking about evolving, because I don't think anything is stagnant. I think everything is totally changing. When I started working in 79 than it was back in the 40s or the 50s. And it's much different now than it was in the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s. Everything continues to change and evolve as we have more information, as we have more knowledge, as we have different challenges, and how we respond to those challenges and the new knowledge.
AIHA Connect 2027. Call for proposals is open. Submissions are due September 9th. Scan the QR code to learn more.
When you think about the next generation of OEHS leaders, what qualities do you believe will help them best protect workers in an increasingly complex world?
The most are understanding the science, being well honed in their profession, in what's happening professionally, to have that background. Even though the acceptance, the reliance on science, we're seeing the questioning of science, the questioning of the value of the CDC and of NIOSH. We're seeing that happen. I do believe that professionals have to have that solid technical background as their basis. You can't argue against someone who's challenging your science if you don't know your science. You have to know your science. And you also have to keep up professionally with what's going on. And there's a lot going on. There's a lot of changes. There's a lot of different points of view coming in. And how do we evaluate things? And what should we evaluate? How much data do we need? And being able to articulate the science in terms that are not just for other industrial hygienists or safety and health professionals, but also to the business world. I really think that's extremely important, that professionals, as they're developing their skills, they're able to communicate to other audiences than just industrial hygienists. And I mean, I love to talk to industrial hygienists. We can talk about exposure limits. We can talk about how they're developed, whatever. But to a business person, give me my bottom line. What is important for you to tell me, how are you going to convince me to spend my $1 million on your workplace controls as opposed to putting these $1 million someplace else? And I feel that the communication skills and the science skills are the two things that professionals have to have, and they have to learn how to integrate them. And I think they will help them move forward and help the profession move forward.
Donna, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so very much for having me as a participant. This has been a great experience. I really enjoyed your questions. I hope my answers provide some insight to the people who listen to this podcast. And if anybody has any questions and they want to contact me, I'm totally available to talk to anyone who wants to talk to me. So anyway, thank you again so very much from the bottom of my heart.
That wraps up today's episode of the AIHA's Healthy Workplaces Show. To learn more, visit the AIHA website and follow us on social media. Thank you for tuning in. And as always, remember that healthy workplaces mean a healthier world. Until next time.